Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? It's been a while since we've had literary wind down. Hi. I'm trying not to play any music because I do not want Instagram to kick me off. So I'm playing it here and there. First time here, welcome. So literary wind down, if you're winding down with wine or a beverage, you put it in the comments to let us know what you're winding down with. Hello, DST Connected, Crystal. Laura's here. Hold on, Instagram is active. Oh, there's. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I am doing great. I am so honored to have you here tonight.
Oh, I'm honored. Don't take your glasses off for me, though. You look fabulous.
I'm going to put them
You're
back
like,
on.
hold on. I'm getting down to business. Let me take these off real quick.
I'm going to put them back on when I start reading my itinerary, going through that so I can get everything correct.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm so excited to talk about your book. I have been, from the moment I found out that you were coming on this platform, I said, you know what? I don't want to fangirl, but I can't help but to fangirl.
Oh, how sweet are you? Oh my gosh.
I said in my one of my posts, I said, no matter what I'm doing, when I hear her voice on TV, I stop in my tracks, no matter, and I turn around and listen to what she has to say. So
meanwhile, my children hear my voice and they're like, Mom, she's gonna make us do chores. What's happening?
So I'm going to do a brief intro and then we're just going to jump right into it. What an amazing book.
Thank you. You are so sweet. Thank you.
What an amazing. Do you know about Bookstagram?
Gee, I think so. Yes,
okay,
I know.
Okay.
Oh, you think I am? Yes.
I like to ask people because some people are like, okay, what's Bookstagram? So you know what Bookstagram is. So we're just going to jump right in. Happy New Year, everyone. This is the first literary wind down of the year, so I'm happy to be back. I took a little bit of a break for the holiday season. I am Janice Harper, and I'm the founder of Spines and Vines and the host of Literary Wind Down. And tonight, what a great way to come back with the one and only Miss Laura Coates. Welcome to Literary Wind Down.
I'm so happy I'm here. Thank you.
Yes. So how are you doing today?
You know, I'm really good. I feel good. You know, as they say, I woke up, had purpose in my life and food on my belly, so I'm good. That's all I can say.
That's wonderful, wonderful. So a little housekeeping, you all. If what we do on Wind Down, if you're winding down with something, be it your favorite cocktail, your beverage, put it in the comments. If you have questions for Laura, put it in the question box. But so I'm actually on a fast, so I'm not winding down with anything, but I am highlighting a wine that I love and that I'm pairing with Just Pursuit. So it's Black Girl Magic Red Blend.
Ooh.
Yes, and it's the perfect wine for Just Pursuit, a Black prosecutor's fight for fairness.
Look, if I wasn't working later, I would be like, oh, hold on, excuse me while you bring me that real quick. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Can I be lame and have my water bottle though?
Absolutely, because I have water as well.
Deer Park Noir.
Perfect. So, most of you should know Laura Coates is the CNN Senior Legal Analyst, Sirius XM host, and the author of Just Pursuit, a Black prosecutor's fight for fairness. Here we go with the glasses. You were a former federal prosecutor for the Assistant United States Attorney for the District of Columbia and a trial attorney in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. You also, in a private practice, you worked on an intellectual property litigator with the expertise in the First Amendment and media law. Graduate of Princeton University School of Public and International Affairs and the University of Minnesota Law School. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
So I just want you to tell the folks a little bit about Look at my tabs. About Just Pursuit.
I love it. Well, first of all, can I get comfortable? Can I put my leg up? I'm
Please get comfortable.
I want to get comfortable today. I'm so glad. Well, you know what? It's funny because I think people, first of all, I see all the comments coming in. I think you are so wonderful and sweet. And thank you for that love. I appreciate it. And for you for being kind enough to invite me on today, because I'm really, really excited to talk to you. And I got to tell you, I think this was the kind of book that people did not expect me to write. I think they assumed that, okay, well, first of all, a lawyer. So you're going to write about something. Here's a Supreme Court case, and then we're going to talk about the context, and we're going to see its place in modern day time, and that would be it. Now, I do love those. I am, I'm a law school nerd and legal junkie. But for me, it was really important to have this narrative memoir, to really personify these issues that we're talking about and let people come on a journey of what it's like to have a battle of allegiance. I know you think about your own careers, whatever you have, the idea of what happens when you don't have the luxury, nor do you want the luxury of checking your identity at the door. You walk in as you are with your whole self and trying to figure out when you have these competing facets of your identity, your lived experience as a Black woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a human being, and your moral compass is pointed one direction, but the orders you're getting are asking you to direct it a different way. What do you do in those moments? And I wanted people, what we're talking about, speaking truth to power, to know what the truth really is. And I felt the storytelling was the most impactful way to do that.
The storytelling is so profound. I found myself in several moments like tearing up, but also being very angry. And so it is a journey. People may think they know because, we watch the news or you've had situations in your own families, but from your vantage point, it's very remarkable, but it's also very maddening at the same time. So
it is. And I wanted some people say, this is the kind of book I thought a defense counsel would write, right? The exposing of certain aspects of the justice system and pointing out why it's oftentimes a legal system more than it's a justice system. But it was important to really bring and peel back the curtain, not because I just wanted people to feel the weight of justice. And there are moments of triumph and there are moments of extraordinary humanity. But there are also moments when, the pursuit of justice can create injustice. And what do you do when that happens? And I equate it almost to, you mentioned it's like being on a train platform sometimes. You're on a train platform and the power of a locomotive, right? That it's a fast moving, machine. About the pistons and all these things. But then you're on a platform and one whizzes by and you feel sort of the weight of it. You feel this moment of the step back moment. You see the might of it and its force. And you understand all of a sudden the power that it has. And what do you do with that? And that's how I felt, knowing intellectually about disproportionate impact and what it means to have marginalized Black and brown communities. We know what that means. We know what it feels like still. But understanding what it looks like in the justice system is that step back moment where you feel its weight.
Yeah. So you mentioned the pursuit of justice creates injustice. That's the first line in the introduction.
Yep.
And I have that in my notes because it blew me. It was so profound to open up that way. And so let's talk about the introduction, because you lay a lot out in the introduction. I mean, you talk about your kids, how you wanted them to view you. You talk about what made you make a change, the 4 words. And so can you talk a little about the introduction? Because it's very powerful.
Well, thank you. I mean, for me, I began obviously in private practice, as you said, but I began in the Justice Department as a civil rights attorney. And it was sort of a foregone conclusion that you knew and everyone knew whose side you were on, right? The perception of who you were championing for. It was never in question, your allegiance. Then I shifted over because I was frustrated by the bureaucracy of the Department of Justice in the voting section, not because the work wasn't important, and it still is.
Yes.
But remember, this is when we had Section 5. We had the pre-clearance authorization. We had Section 2 not yet being rendered anemic by a Supreme Court. And it was still difficult to navigate the bureaucracy because you can imagine people have a thumb on the scale and have a very big interest in what the DOJ determines about what might be discriminatory. And I wanted to have a more tangible role in justice, believing that the policy initiatives that we're working on and the investigations were not going to be as impactful as being on the ground in the courtroom doing trials. And there was a level of naivete that I write about in the introduction where a colleague of mine warned me and said, Coates, we just have people, Coates, you don't want this. You don't want this level of human misery. This isn't, you will not feel powerful. Not because I was arrogant and coveted, but because it's going to be a jarring revelation to you. And I thought that he was misinformed and didn't get what justice was supposed to look like. And I figured I'm under the same umbrella of the Department of Justice. I'll be a criminal prosecutor. It was a huge transformation and shift in the perception of whose side I was on, whose allegiance. And you mentioned the 4 words. And that was one day, you know, a supervisor of mine watched the trial and I got the guilty verdict, which frankly was expected based on our ability to meet the burden. And he came to sort of cheer me on and goes, great, we got another one.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it felt like almost I had been indoctrinated into something, or that the expectation was what I wanted to be in this idea of them versus us. And who was the getting one? What is it you mean? Not, think about the word choice, not you secure the conviction or the victim will feel good. It was, we got another one. And I took from that moment and wrote about what that felt like to have that moment of who is it that I am and who do you think I am? And I'm writing the book from the perspective of, you know, I had my back-to-back stair-step babies. I was 18 months apart. And I write about how I wanted them to understand what I was carrying while I was carrying them. Because I knew one day my children would ask the very questions that they do now. They ask questions like, Mommy, I heard you talk about George Floyd calling for his mother. Would you come if that were me? Inevitability, I wrote about my own husband who, and I talk about it, installed another device in our house, right? And one day he comes home, and you all know in this era of the pandemic, this is before the pandemic hit though, of the number of packages that probably come to your house. And you go, my God, do you need another package? What is in this one? And he's a total techie. And he came and he was installing a camera on my dashboard. And I said, you don't need this. Why are you doing it? I don't need this. What are you doing this for? And my strong husband looked at me with tears in his eyes. And he said, Laura, it's for you. Because if I'm ever pulled over by police officers, I want you to know what happened and that I would never have left my family. And imagine what that feels like. I cried writing it and holding my husband's hand, thinking about the idea of, here I am, a part of a system that I know needs to be reformed. But maybe he sees me as the exception, maybe the rule. But in any event, this man felt the inevitability of his own demise at the hands of people that I worked with all the time. And in that moment, I knew that a change had to happen.
Yes. Because you, in the book, you make a statement. You said, I had been a trusted champion of the people who look like me. But now I was often distrusted as an agent of a system that disproportionately filled prisons with people who look like me.
Yeah.
So how did you, balance that and carry that, like with your work and your life balance? Because that had to be very difficult.
I don't know that I always did it well. I think like everyone else, we compartmentalize and try to put on the armor we need. Maybe it's your role of doing affirmations before you leave the house. We all have to build ourselves up in a way to prepare for what the world will throw at you. And I certainly had in my time thinking about the armor that I needed to be able to focus and be objective, but also the armor that I would need so that I could not experience the secondary trauma that I ultimately did experience from it. And I write about the idea of the insomnia and the moments of, when you take it home with you, it can infiltrate every aspect of your lives. And although it didn't happen to me, I felt it nonetheless in a way that we all experience it, maybe as Black women, as mothers, as human beings. Yes. There's no way you can hear about Elijah McClain walking down the street in Colorado and being stopped and apologizing for his own encounter with the police officers and having ketamine injected and rendering them brain dead eventually. You don't take that and go, okay, well, that's what happened to them. You know, as a mother, I look at it and say, my God, there's a reason my kids can't carry toy guns and can't buy them up. My son I'm only 5'3", but my son is like a giant from I don't know where. He's just a giant, and he always is tracked at that high end of the, you know, the scales. And I think to myself, God, what if my baby boy is mistaken for a man like Tamir Rice in a moment? What does that feel like? And so I've had to sort of grapple with the ideas of barricading myself and also allowing myself to feel so it could drive my ambition towards helping people all the more. But make no mistake, you know, I may have a stoic sort of exterior and persona that I know people talk about comes across when I'm doing commentary, but as often as I am telling and having the conversation with the world, I'm going back and having a talk with my children, explaining it from the perspective of a woman, of a mother, of somebody who I don't have all the answers, but I'll look for them.
I don't think you come across stoic at all. I think you come across as you know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, good.
I mean, 110%. Like you tell it like it is, straight. And I love that. I love that about your personality from what I gather, what I get from the TV. So I don't think it's stoic at all. My 2 cents.
Thank you.
So can we talk about,
thank you.
You're welcome, the structure of the book? 16 stories. I just, oh my goodness.
Trying to interrupt our call. I'll keep blocking someone's call. Stop calling me, whoever's calling me. I'm talking. Go ahead.
It always happens.
Right.
You had so many cases throughout your career. How did you decide on these 16 to talk about?
You know, I had to sort of curate it in ways because, as you can imagine, there are many stories to tell and people who impacted me a great deal. And I never ventured to judge them. I just wanted to tell the stories. And I chose these because they were, I felt, the most talked about and pervasive points that we were all having. You know, the ideas of talking about exonerations and mistaken identity and what that looks like at the beginning when you have a chance to do something about it, as opposed to decades later having to address that somebody has been in prison for all this time and no one took the time to just say, hold on. I talk about that in the book as what it's like to have that moment when you watch a white female judge berating a Black defendant because he's professing his innocence and where we would presume it, and her looking to me for camaraderie and affirmation, and me having that moment as a woman, as a Black woman, looking and saying, well, why should we give carte blanche and the benefit of the doubt without even thinking about it to the officers? They get it wrong. Right. And talking about what that looks like in our society and having that moment, to the idea of in a Me Too era, when we talk about believe women in a court of public opinion, and we talk about the way in which Black women are so often left out of the conversations about being victimized and who's entitled to be thought of as a victim. And I really wanted one of the chapters to talk about what that looks like in a court of law and how victim blaming and shaming and the preconceived notions we expect men to have come sometimes out of our own sisters, and what that looks like. And so I was thinking across of the moments that made me go, this is what we're talking about right now. This is what people have to understand when they're asking and talking with the marching orders for justice. Let me tell you what it looks like. And then maybe by showing you, you can change something. Mm-hmm. And of course, immigration. I talk about the idea of the kindred spirit of shared sort of mutual oppression, and what that looks like, and what it's like for me to have been asked to participate in a deportation. These are challenging times we live in.
Yes. And so we're not spoiling anything or giving anything away, because you guys need to purchase the book. It came out on Tuesday.
Do you mean this book?
Yes, I mean this book. You need to purchase this book.
It's kissing you.
Yes. So let's talk about, because you mentioned it, the first story, Please Don't Come Here. I think it's just so eye-opening that it was a victim. And can you just tell a little bit about what happened?
Well, you know, I was doing a sort of a run-of-the-mill car theft case where people need to realize even if you're a victim of a crime or a witness going to testify, or the police officer, let alone the defendant, we run background checks to make sure that anyone coming into a trial courtroom, we're on notice about who may have an active warrant, or maybe have to tell the marshal something for our protection, for yours, for the justice system. And I was doing a routine background check on a case I had inherited before trial. And it pinged that the victim of the car theft had been in the country illegally for decades. He had a deportation warrant that was still active from when he was a teenager. And since that time had lived in a complete lawful and law-abiding life, had no such as even sneeze in a cop's direction. And what put him in front of us was the fact that he was a victim of a crime. And I had this conflict of knowing that I might have to turn somebody in to immigration officials, and the crime we treat it as a criminal in the same way that this person who had a rap sheet, and I mean a real one, not the kind that a Tennessee senator talks about for a judicial nominee, an actual criminal record, not a 5 miles over speed limit, but an actual criminal record, who needed to have accountability, that they would be treated the same. And frankly, the person who is an undocumented person would be treated even more harshly and have less of an opportunity for due process. And the tension of knowing that my moral compass pointed in the direction of, this is an injustice. Meanwhile, the orders of, do you want your bar license or not? Yes. Do you want to stay in this office or not? And I talk about that tension of what that really ultimately feels like. And you can imagine just going out from there, you know that if people fear exposure coming out of the shadows, whether it's a domestic violence victim of somebody, of an intimate partner, or somebody who's being exploited by their employer, who knows full well, what are you going to do about it if I don't pay you? Yeah. What are you going to do about it if I harm you, if I rob you, if I commit a sexual assault against you? This choice that people who are victimized in our country, they now have a choice. Do I report and help society, or do I report and or do I stay silent and risk further victimization? And ultimately, what will they do to me? It's just sometimes it's an impossible situation, but it's not impossible if we know that it happens and can do about it.
Yeah, that starts off the book, so it only goes on from there. And the one I got a little chuckle. We have to talk about a seat at the right table.
I was minding my own business, sis. I just want you to know. I was minding my own business. Good.
But I felt like I was actually at the table. I could see the facial expressions. I don't even know what your facial expression, but I could hear it because you read your audiobook, which is fabulous. So I listen to the audio, but I could hear it in your voice. So let's talk about, it's the tension between Black defense attorneys and prosecutors. Mm-hmm. And what role are you supposed to have in the justice system?
Right.
And so can you talk a little about a seat at the right table?
Well, I jokingly say, because we talk about, all the time how we want to have a seat at the table, to be in the room where it happens, that you've got to be at the table to make the decisions, to be a gatekeeper, to have the opportunity to exercise discretion in a fair way. And yet there's a tension and this assumption, I think it obviously is the wrong one, that Black and brown people should only have one role in the justice system. The assumption that we are only the defendants, and if anything else, we're going to be defense counsel. And if you're civil rights oriented, that's where you have to be. We don't talk about the need to have us at the judicial bench, at the prosecutor's table, at the policymakers level, all the way up through including the executive branch of government. And so this challenge, that one day I was sitting, as I said, minding my own business, having a meal in a restaurant that I go to all the time for escapism. And I was approached by a Black woman defense counsel who wanted to challenge the fact that I had the audacity in her mind to consider myself civil rights oriented and yet be standing where the stereotypical white man, the man, would be. And we had a conversational confrontation about the idea of who had the right seat at the table and where we were supposed to be. Whether you were supposed to be in a proactive position where you had the ability to make determinations and exercise discretion, or you had to be in the reactive position to guard against constitutional infringements and the like. And it was a fascinating moment that really carried over into a lot of the work I did and ongoing trial courtroom experiences. You know, you've got the retorts, you've got the moments when you're like, oh, is that what, oh, really? Sort of the routine of the enemies. And it talks about that. And I you know, it's an important conversation to highlight because we too often think that we have but one role and that you must only be reactive to injustice as opposed to a gatekeeper and thinking about prevention better as being better, you know, better than cure. And it's a really fascinating time to talk about the roles we play. And one, frankly, that our own Vice President, Kamala Harris, had to endure the criticism when she was then candidate Harris, speaking about, well, how can you say that you are for the people of the United States, let alone a community within the people of the United States, and be a prosecutor? And I felt a kindred spirit thinking about the experience that she was going through, having to defend the role she played as the Attorney General of California, knowing that the victims were Black and brown as well.
Right.
And did they not have a right to have a champion? Did they not have a right to have somebody in their corner? And so it's a fascinating chapter about that exploration.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating chapter. It's quite entertaining because.
And I was minding my own business.
But did you have to pay her the $20?
No. Wait and see.
So let's talk about That's Not Me. And you say Blackness is an implicit, is it charge? I'm left out. Implicit charge in the criminal justice system.
Right.
You have to defend against the charge as much as the stereotype. So can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, we all know sometimes what it feels like to have people's stereotypes define you, even though it's not rooted in any logic. It's rooted only in stereotypes and bigotry and, you know, implicit bias as much as overt bias. And I write about the idea of how when we're talking about the weight of the justice system, I mean, nobody wants to be on the other side of a V when it says United States versus. We talk about in social media. You don't ever want to be the hashtag that's trending because you know the pain that must be, you know, along with that and what that means to see someone trending. What does that name mean? The same way we might listening to music and we hear the radio playing and all of a sudden they play an artist you love 3 or 4 songs in a row and you're like, did this person die? Oh my God, what just happened here? This idea of why is this person being highlighted in this way? And you think about in the justice system, how these blink moments don't often happen where someone can say, look, that's not me. That wasn't me. The joke of you're getting Black people confused. That's not me. We don't all look alike.
Right.
Well, that plays out in a comical way when we're, you know, sort of doing banter. It plays out in a tragic way when officers get it wrong. And sometimes they get it wrong. Now, we know that, I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, really, except for a plea, someone's going to say, it wasn't me, I'm innocent, because they have that right to profess their innocence. And so you sort of get a nonchalance about the idea of, okay, no, I know it's not you. You've got this presumption of innocence. You're right. I've proved my case. But there are those moments when suddenly something clicks that you are providing a benefit of the doubt to law enforcement in a way they don't extend to Black and brown people. And wait a second, what would it take to simply say, well, what if it's not you? What would that sort of second chance redemption moment look like? Nipping it at the bud, as opposed to, we're very sorry you just spent 25 years in a prison today. And I write about it in the book of just how oftentimes, you know, when you're talking about the preconceived notions and the bias and the way that race factors into our justice system, we would be fools to think that it doesn't infect every aspect of it. And if we don't address the fact that it's a real, you know, it's an ingredient in this cake, then we'll never change it because we're too embarrassed to confess what is still true in America, that race is as much a part of our justice system and has as much a role along with bias as anything else. And sometimes one's own race can be the star witness against them. And that's not fair or right. And as a prosecutor, I always had to try to think about in my mind, God, I am the beneficiary of the benefit of the doubt as well. I'm the beneficiary of a juror saying, well, they wouldn't have brought a case against that person if they didn't have something. Well, there you go. So there you have it. So what do you do with that power? And do you use it to stop for a moment and say, hold on, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong?
Yeah. You said it's the Black defendant versus the history of the United States.
Yes.
That's a powerful statement.
And you know it's true. I mean,
Yes.
you know that it's true. We know, and when we say history, unfortunately, we're not talking about, you know, the dinosaur ages. We're talking about the experience of our parents, the experience of ourselves as children, the experience, unfortunately, of our children as well, what they are guarding against and having to deal with. And it's a living history. And like I said, I mean, we have our just pursuits, but what if we actually are the dog that catches the car? Like, what if we actually catch justice one day? Where will we be then?
Yeah, I saw you did an interview where you talked about like the trials, you know, thinking more broadly about just this one case, you know, not lumping it in as we've solved everything. That person, they went to jail, they were convicted, versus just, you know, that's I think you were on
You stop. Sorry,
am
you
I
moved for a
stopped?
second. You said just, I hear you again. Go ahead.
Oh, I said when you were talking about when we get convictions, when
Right.
people have done the wrong thing, you know, not thinking of that as a solution for everything. It's just that one particular case and that
Yes.
person was convicted. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I think we let our justice system and our legislators and those who are in positions of power off the hook when we think about justice as a binary concept. When we say it's either a guilty verdict or it's an acquittal. And it's all you have to do. Just prosecute this person and there you go. Everything's solved. And we can't think of it like that. I remember Attorney General from Minnesota, my home state, Keith Ellison spoke about the Derek Chauvin trial after a guilty verdict, which was the right decision, and made the comment that this is but one trial. This is not, essentially, that I'm paraphrasing him, this is not the panacea here. There is still a lot of work to be done. And I think when we just focus on, the officer's behavior, when we just focus on the issues of qualified immunity, when we just focus on the idea of the reluctance of prosecutors to bring cases, when we just focus on what happens outside before the trial begins, we are ignoring that this is an ecosystem and that everything has a hand in everything else, right? This idea of, you know, if you say to a legislator, member of Congress, we want reform, we want justice reform. What do you mean? Because of the way officers are violent towards some people, and the way some officers are doing things in the wrong way. Okay, well, gosh, I really tried. I tried to give you that, couldn't work out. So I guess my work here is done. As opposed to, actually, while you asked, I would also like there to be that database. So you have officers who are problematic, not just going from place to place with no track record. Also, this qualified immunity aspect of it. And how about that, which is a Supreme Court concept that they created that wasn't put anywhere else, or the Supreme Court's decision that you hold an officer to a reasonable officer standard, what another officer would have done, as opposed to what a reasonable person would have done. How about revisiting that? How about this idea of thinking about unions and the power of police unions? How about thinking about the voir dire process and our bail issues and how we've got this presumption of innocence, but you got to pay for that. Yes. You really have to pay for it. And I can't forget the still unsolved mystery of what happened to Sandra Bland. I mean, a woman finds herself trying to get bailed out and ends up dead. Why? How? When? What? Or Khalif Browder in New York, a young boy accused of stealing a backpack. And he ends up in one of the most notorious jails in isolation. I mean, how does this happen? And in a world where he's presumed innocent. You see, if we just focus on a police encounter and say, that's how we think about reform, we'll never get anywhere. if you think about the idea of how we view the idea and the experience of victims of crimes, and the idea of what we assign for the work of our mental health providers, and like, I mean, you could keep going, right? Yes. About all the things. But if I could say to a member of Congress, well, I guess you tried. You did try to go ahead and solve that one problem. No, I think we have to be in a position where we are bold enough to want it all. And we can whittle down from there. You know, I can ask for the world and hope to land among the stars, but I can't start out by asking for terrestrial things and saying, I guess we tried. No, that's where we have to be.
Yeah, wow, powerful, definitely. I'm going to take some questions in 1 second, but sure. I want to ask the one story that really made me angry. Can you guess which one?
The little girl, the judge, who? There's so many.
Oh, yeah, that one made me mad too. It's early on. Let me show you something funny. Let's talk about that. Can you tell? We're not going to give anything away, you guys, but you have to hear. Let me show you something funny. Talk about that.
So, in a moment when I found myself preparing for multiple trials, we're juggling all the time, right? The number of cases you have, it's not unheard of to have back-to-back trials, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And in my haste and irritation to have a moment of escapism, a white male colleague of mine appeared at my doorstep and said, "Hey, Coates, want to see something funny?" And I thought, well, God, this is a moment. Yes, I would love that reprieve. It's kind of the equivalent of a coffee break that we have, right? Mm-hmm. Little did I know that this person who had intended to try to take me under his wing would take me down to the basement of our own office. And to see something funny was a young Black male defendant chained to a chair who he was trying to convert to an informant. And I won't give the experience away in full, but I'll tell you, that was one of those moments, just juxtaposing the humanity shown to me from that defendant, mm-hmm. compared to the inhumane treatment by my colleague who thought he was auditioning for some long lost season of The Wire, which was a whole nother thing, to the mansplaining of, this is how you do justice. Don't you want to be like this? The idea of emulating him. I had a moment of, wait a second. Even he was angry or thought it was odd. Why are you shaking hands with them?
Yes.
Just that notion of it. And I thought to myself at that moment of, when in this game of the us versus thems, did you think I was you? Mm-hmm. You know, when did this happen? And it was a moment to reflect from my own self of how I had inadvertently been complicit by my own presence in this. And I couldn't say, well, man, that wasn't me. It wasn't my case. I would never have done that because I'm in the room where it's happening.
Right.
So what do you do? And when you find yourself in those moments, and it really, it changed the way I approached cases, but also the way I viewed my colleagues at times. And I had the great fortune of having wonderful colleagues who I respect a great deal. I also have had the misfortune and the fortune of having colleagues that I did not respect and did not think should have the opportunity to say their name on behalf of the people of the United States, because that also includes the person who is the defendant. Yes. And whether you like it or not, you are not having an individual client. It is the people of the United States, and they have rights and they should be honored. And so, you know, it took it as a moment of, who do I think I am? And having to answer that question.
Yeah, that one was hard. Mm-hmm. I mean, having a son, it was very hard to read that chapter, and just how he, like you said, had his moment of being auditioning for The Wire, the way he was talking to the defendant.
Calling him bruh.
Yeah.
Like, I've never heard the word bruh before. What are you saying to me? What are you saying? What are you saying?
Yes, exactly. Let me see what question we have here. Oh, do you have any advice for young Black people who want to get into law?
Do it. I say absolutely do it, and do it unapologetically. And we need you. And I would tell you, unapologetically bring your whole self in. Do not think for 1 second that you have to conform, or that there is one way to pursue justice You have to be willing in the courtroom, in corporate America, in whatever your particular board or courtroom is, bring your whole self in. Bring the fact that you have the experiences you do. You will not be worse off for it. It will be something that will make you better. And it's not going to be easy to bring your whole self in. There'll be moments when you would like to compartmentalize. But take it from me, you owe yourself and the world around you the ability and the opportunity to see the world through the eyes of people who are too often forgotten. And the choices we make are as important as the legal textbooks that tell you what the law is supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to know personally, in writing this book, what was the hard parts, or was it all just very, I'm sure it was all challenging, but did anything give you pause as you are doing all this remembering?
You know, I was very afraid to write the book, I have to tell you. I really felt afraid to the point where I reconsidered a number of times because I feel very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, frankly, I'm in the position that I have asked others to be in. And here are the choices I've made. Now judge them,
Mm-hmm.
or see them, or hear about them. I mean, the people that I came across in the Department of Justice as a prosecutor, I can tell you, I didn't meet monsters. I met people who met me after making decisions that were among the worst of their lives.
Yes.
Or decisions that were made that impacted their lives. And in that moment, you almost strip away the whole person and focus on that choice. Like you sort of rub a dog's nose in their own mess.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt vulnerable about that prospect. And I felt vulnerable about letting people in that way and being emotional, because I'm not someone who, I don't walk out of my house and go, anyone like my outfit? Like, anyone have a criticism today? But I thought it was important for people to know that in my quest to have been a champion for people and a champion for justice, I never intended to be a heroine. I never sought to self-aggrandize myself. It wasn't important for me to get an accolade if people didn't know the truth. It was important for me, when I heard people talk about and cry out for justice, not just be careful what you wish for in its present state, but also, look, here's what it looks like. And show me what you see that you can do differently. And maybe you learn from my experience, maybe you vicariously experience somebody else and you do better. And I think that was the hard part revisiting. And a lot of it was just, I found myself, thank God I wasn't writing it on actual paper, because the paper would have been soaked at times as I was remembering.
I can imagine.
And, mm-hmm. and there would be moments I would have anxiety attacks, and my husband would say, why don't you take a break for a second? Because I feel like you're reliving something, and I would be reliving the moments, and I'd be thinking about my son would come in, or my daughter, they're now 7 and 9, would come in and go, Mommy, are you okay? And my son would just say, he's such a sweet kid, would say, Mommy, are these tears of joy, or are you in pain? Oh. And my daughter would say, I think she's just remembering again. Mm-hmm. And, so I knew that my kids had questions about, where does Mommy kind of go when she hears about these cases, or when there's insomnia, or when mm-hmm. there's a moment when I'm, clutching my children for dear life. I wanted them to understand a little bit more about who their mother is and was and is trying to be. And so that was what kept me focused on, all right, Laura, look, it needs to pour out of you, and became equal parts catharsis and a catalyst. And I feel better having written it. I feel better in the sense of it's not just my story that's being shared, but it's the stories of the people that I want desperately for their stories to be told. Because the pages of the book, they turn because you want to know what happened to them. Yeah. And you want to know what could have been and how it cannot be. And I hope that people get that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. There's a part where you say, you read on your Facebook page, you said, my parents showed me who they were. And I think one of the best things you can do as a parent is show your kids who you are too. Yeah. And I would have to say, I'm sure they are already, but as they get older, they're going to be extremely proud. I mean, they're going to be.
Well, I'm sure you have a little boy, or you have more than one. Your children?
Oh, they're not. No, I don't have a little. My daughter's 28.
You
and
always have a little boy and a little
yes.
girl.
Okay, so yeah, my little one is 25 and my oldest is 28.
Okay, so let's stop and pause and talk about your skincare routine, if you can, for a second, because I don't know how old she's pretending to be, but okay, sure. Let me go back away from the camera lens.
We'll talk on the side about the skincare, but
no, I hope I gotta tell you, I revere my parents, and I'm so proud of them, and I'm so grateful to them, and to my two older sisters, who are my absolute heroes. And I tell you, I'm glad I didn't have parents who just made everything pretty, who didn't show you what it was like to be an entrepreneur, who didn't show you what it was like to struggle, who just wanted everything to be the days of wine and roses. No, my parents showed me, and I think it prepared me, because they're as much as anything else, they always wanted us to be resilient. That was an important quality to have. They hoped for joy. They knew it would come. They knew that pain would come, but they wanted, resilience in the end. And I hope that I teach my kids the same, and that they will one day. My son has started to read it, and he's asked me questions about it. And it says in there, as my dedication to them, they know full well. It says something that my own father said to me in a moment of despair. And he said, "Laura, if you are never more than you are today, for me, you were more than enough." And I wanted my kids to feel that in a world that treats them sometimes like they don't matter at all.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I want to ask you what's next. I know, I mean, what do you read? What are you reading? I know that you have this fabulous show on Sirius XM.
Thank you.
Yeah. So can you talk about that? I mean,
I do a daily show, 3 hours a day, because apparently I cannot stop talking.
When I saw that it was 3 hours, I was like, wow, 3 hours.
It's 3 hours every
day.
weekday, Monday through Friday, from 3 to 6 p.m. And it's a call-in show as well, so I invite anyone to call in. It's on the POTUS channel. And I used to have a show on the Urban View channel, which is why I call it my other home, and I love it. But I'm on the POTUS channel now at 3 to 6 on weekdays. And it's really a time I find that, it's called POTUS, and people think about the politics of the United States. Mm-hmm. I look at it as the people of the United States. Mm-hmm. And I want to know what you think and what you feel, because I don't know about you, but I've seen 1,000 polls about what public opinion is, and no one bothered to ask me. So I'd like to know what you're thinking. And I want to just not focus on just the sound bites. It's a chance to really go behind it and talk about the issues and how they impact us. And so it makes me feel very proud to know that, this little girl, I consider myself this kid with a stutter as a kid, that people want to listen to me, and they want to converse, and I don't take it lightly for a second. And I'm so grateful the love that I have been shown, and people challenge me, and that's fine too. And I welcome the conversation, because I welcome the opportunity to have that connection. And especially these last 2 years, when people have felt just a little bit less alone. Yes. I've appreciated it.
Yeah. I can't let you go without bringing this up. And I think
what?
And we talk about Jeopardy.
I'm like, what? Jeopardy. Jeopardy.
How can I not?
I've heard about Jeopardy. There's something about it.
I mean, I think it was someone's wish to have you host. And yeah.
Well, you know what? Let me show you something, because I think it will help. I asked the opportunity, and I was so unbelievably humbled that somebody that I always watched, and I still watch Jeopardy. I love it. I love the intellectual challenge. And I tell you, it would be wonderful if I had the answers in front of me. When I'm asked questions, that'd be really wonderful. But I asked for the opportunity. I was told no. And that it wasn't persuasive enough, that Mr. Trebek had thought of me. And I tell you, I never thought that I was entitled to anything besides perhaps an opportunity to prove myself.
Right.
And I think that's what we all feel like in our days, that we're never entitled to the result, but one can always hope that the opportunities will present. But you know, I keep this in my office. I keep it in my office, which is where I am right now. And I tell you, I'm crazy. I wear my own jersey. You hear me?
Yeah. Well, hey.
I wear my own jersey.
Yes.
I wear my own jersey because sometimes nobody else will, and I have to remain my champion. And
yes.
if it means sometimes creating your own opportunities or following the blessings that you have or defining your success on your own terms, you ought to do that. And you better feel comfortable with wearing that jersey because, look, at the end of the day, you know who you are and you know your dreams and you know your goals. And if you wear your jersey, you'll get there. So I wear mine. So here you go. I mean, mine says Coates from Minnesota, but maybe yours is something different, of course. But I wear my own jersey, and that's a reminder from that experience of life.
I love it. I cannot thank you enough. I didn't even get to tap into voting rights, but you know, that's a whole another hour.
Don't worry, they're so intact right now. No one's trying to mess with them. What do you mean? I wrote about it in the book.
You wrote about it in the book, and thank goodness. But I cannot thank you enough. We need your voice. It is so, I mean, you are absolutely phenomenal in my book. I'm so grateful to have you here. And everyone, please go get Just Pursuit. If you're an audiobook listener, fabulous audio. She narrates it. So
I'm like, wait, I got to do the voices?
Yes. Very good. Very, very good. So
well, listen, sis, I want to tell you, thank you for having me on.
Of course.
I really have enjoyed the chance to get to know you. I hope you'll stay in touch. I really appreciate it. And I can't always, I see people in the chats, and I want you all to know I do see them. I can't always respond, but I can tell you it breaks my heart open to see the love that I'm getting, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and take care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.